such thing as you never delete data, right? So they just compile this data in huge amounts from, people of all kinds. And where's the privacy, right? I'm gonna bring I've become so protective of my privacy in a way, because people will ask me all kinds of questions, like, when you go to just the dentist to get a cleaning, they're going to be like asking you, what's your job, what's your social security, what is this, what do you do? And then I'm like, excuse me, where you come from? Excuse me, why do you care? Like, I don't understand. Why are you putting together all this information about me? And one of the things that concerns me is, like, what is the quality of, security systems that these places have? If a hacker from, China finds out where Trump goes to the dentist, he can, easily hack into the dentist account. He can easily hack into the doctor's database. And these people can find our data, anywhere and everywhere, because we give them away so freely. We have to be more protective with our data, I think.
Well, I think you bring up some really good points. It gets into a debate, though. Is it the problem of large corporations that now have too much control? Is it the government that has too much control? Is it a mixture of both of them working together? The way I look at it is, I don't think the free market is the issue, right? Everyone now is saying capitalism is the problem. Capitalism is the problem. The problem is we don't have capitalism. So what people are calling, yeah, we have this corporatocracy, right, which is fascism. That's the definition of fascism. So we have government control over the corporations. And you brought up some really good points, but the bigger concern is what happens with the government regulations in the back end, right? So for example, let's look at the media institutions. Why are these large media companies like CNN, the NBCs, the CNBCs, all these channels on cable news have a monopoly? Because the government gives them the monopoly. If I wanted to stream this right now through the cable channels, I need to go to the FCC. I need to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in licensing fees every year to be able to do that, if they even give me permission. And I think the same thing is happening now with the technology companies. And you brought up a really good point where you say, look, we all know Facebook, Twitter, Google, Apple have these giant monopolies now. And those are probably the four most impactful, especially when you look at people like InfoWars getting banned from the App Store. Okay, you can ban them from Facebook, that's one thing. There's other similar platforms that you could go on to. But when you ban them from really the only two major stores, Google Play and the App Store, now you're limiting his right to conduct business, to make a living, to get their speech out. But the problem is, it's not that hard to duplicate the App Store, right? So if there's a problem with how Apple starts regulating their own App Store and they start banning things off, a developer like myself or someone else could build another platform. The problem is the government then comes in and says, oh, they have the patents, so we're going to protect by force the monopoly.
Yeah. A lot of people tell me, and that's the one of the things that people don't understand when it comes to capitalism. They think that they have to either be capitalist or a socialist, to the both extremes, right? They think that it's either one end or the other. And when you realize this is not actually capitalism, because we are allowing these companies to really regulate over us in a very dictatorial kind of way. I always have problems with that word. It's crazy. I always have problems. But in a very dictatorial kind of way, in which they pretty much don't allow the little guy to compete or to even enter the market. And I had a discussion about that when it came to Amazon. People are like, oh, Amazon is just so big because they pick up every little guy and then they put them together and they give them a platform. Well, no, what they're doing is that they're just openly, swallowing that industry, but they're not really allowing. They take away the profit, and if the little guy try to do that on his own, he'll get massacred. If every single person that sells on Amazon, what's the difference between you selling on Amazon and you're just selling by yourself, because on Amazon you're gonna end up on page 54, right? You're like, oh, if I go through Amazon, I'm gonna have a platform. You might end up on page 54. There's 100,000 people before you selling their products there. You'll be the same. You face the same odds if you were just doing it on your own from your house and just shipping things on your own. But the thing is that Amazon, the whole business model will not allow that, and companies grow to a point where they will swallow all the little guys, and they will just become so huge that you cannot compete. You cannot bring up diversity. You cannot bring up different types of companies that have different values and different products, and you end up with things like huge prices and not a lot of product diversity. And this is so that it's terrible for capitalism. It's terrible for the consumer. And this is what happens with big pharma. This is what happens with when you go to a hospital. And the problem behind it is, for example, this companies, they own the government, so nothing of that is seen from the customer side. So why they want free healthcare? Because dollars to the government for that flu shot, who's going to be looking at those numbers? Nobody. They're not going to charge me for it. They're going to charge the government. That money's going to come out of my taxes anyway, but nobody's going to be actually following the trail. So that's why it's important for them. They work together. They get subsidies from the government, and they pay for people who to go to Congress. And that's some of the things that we need to look into as a country.
I think you bring up some good points. I just watched, I think it was a congressional testimony from like a week or two ago. And of course, like Alexandria Cortez and all the people they're promoting were in on this thing. And it was talking about a lot of those changes. And they were basically saying, how can we try to reduce prices? And the VA said, one of the guys said, well, we negotiate better prices, and generally it's like 23% cheaper than the private market. And then another guy chimes in, well, in Europe it's 200 or 300 times cheaper. So then there was a debate on what's the best route. Do they tie it where they make regulations forcing these drug companies to lower their prices and keep it within like 123% of a European country, or do they go and negotiate, which is what they were arguing? I say that it's really neither. The cost is, again, because of the government. So the government creates the problem by having a huge amount of hurdles to get through, which cost tens of millions of dollars to get a drug approved. Then they come in and they say, okay, great, congratulations, you just spent 15 years getting through the FDA, who's completely corrupt. I mean, that's been proven time and again. Just watch the movie Vax about the fraud committed with the MMR vaccine. Not saying that all vaccines are bad, but there was documented fraud happening with the FDA. Look at Monsanto and what they're coming out. Look at synthetic marijuana that just got approved. So the FDA, again, controls the monopoly, which then allows the corporation to turn around and charge whatever they want.
If you start looking at that, and if you start peeling your eyes, you're gonna see that everywhere. You're gonna notice, why is this airplane seat so tight? Why don't I have room for my legs? Well, why are we letting Qatar Airlines become a domestic airline and then come here and take over? Why aren't we letting all these airlines come here and be a part of the market? Why we have only Delta, American, and a few others having a monopoly? What's going on? And you see that in all of the markets, and it's really one of the things that people don't realize. Those are characteristics of a socialist system, because socialism is not about allowing the little guy to grow. And this is, I'm going to go on two tangents here, but pretty much what socialism does is there's a handful of big companies who are in corrupt agreements with the government. I'm not going to say all of these are, or if they are, I don't know. But in a socialist system, the companies are in corrupt agreements with the government. They perhaps even partly owned by the government, and they're the only ones that are allowed to operate. And the little guy gets buried in the regulations and fees and all kinds of unnecessary things, and time frames. I mean, if you try to open a business in Brazil, it took you 2 years to just open, to start functioning. So when you realize all of those things, you see that it's set up against the people for the corporations, and you really have to wonder, why is the system this way? Are we really that far from socialism? Are we really that far from censorship? Are we really that far from all of these things that we see happening? Just because it's like the whole thing about the frog being boiled slowly, right? You slowly increase the heat, and then the frog doesn't realize it's getting boiled alive.
Right, right. The problem is not even that. I feel we've already boiled. We're boiling. We've been boiling for as long as I can remember. The problem is we've been pacified. So basically, it's pretty amazing. I think it was the 13th Amendment that abolished slavery, is what a lot of people say it did. But when you actually read the wording, what it did is, yes, it got rid of like physical slavery, which was good. I don't think anyone should be slaves. But what it did is it became a straw man type of slavery, a usurpation, where, when you look at your birth certificate, you'll notice your name's in all capitals. It's because there's a free person named you, and then there's a legal entity named you. The same way as if I were to create a corporation, that's a legal entity. And when they did that, they used that as bondage, literally, for loans. So they needed money. They said, hey, we have X amount of bonds, X amount of people, of citizens, of corporations, and they loaned against that. And most people don't realize that at all. So that's kind of where all this starts. We have to go at the root, and everyone's always arguing about the symptoms. Everyone's arguing about healthcare, it's really bad, or the environment's really bad, or inequality's bad. Whatever it is, those are all symptoms of the root. The root is that we are all in a financial slave system, a debt system, and that's stealing from us every day constantly, but it's invisible and it's slow. And that's why people haven't figured it out.
Yeah, that's why I don't think the government should be in a lot of businesses, because they just don't have the ability to provide the services to people. I don't think the government should be in the business of providing education, because what does the government know about education? What does the government know about the type of education that I want for my child? I want to be able to choose that. I want to be able to, choose the type of healthcare that I want. What does the government know about healthcare? And in the end, I'm paying, thousands of dollars in taxes, but I may end up just having to pay the private sector anyway, because I get into the hospital and the quality of services are terrible. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, "Oh, my mom was pregnant with me, and she qualified for the free, labor, but they wouldn't provide her with pain medicine, so she would just have to give birth without any kind of, pain medicine. So you're paying thousands of dollars worth of taxes for a system that's not even built to support you, and now you're having to pay for something else, something private. And when you end up realizing that all that money is being taken away from you, along with the choice of what kind of services and what kind of quality of services you actually want and you actually need as a consumer, then that becomes economic slavery. We're just like economic slaves to the system, and we don't realize that.
Right, and I think we're getting in a really dangerous position too, because not only are we in that position, but then people have been miseducated to believe that that's the solution to improve the system. But they don't think ahead at all. I mean, think about it. Okay, assumed we did what they want and we have Medicare for all, right? Then your system that you just said happens. So you go to the doctor for one thing, they can only provide a portion of it, or they have doctors that are really not happy because now they are really enslaved, right? Doctors wouldn't be able to perform without going through the government, and they're not happy with bureaucracy just like most people aren't. So now you have unhappy doctors, you have miscarriage, basically miscare all the time because they can't afford it, so they're always rationing it out. So imagine this social credit score system combined with that. That's what's happening in China right now. In China, they literally, right now, as we are speaking, have tens of thousands of people in internment camps. Literally. People are always talking about the Holocaust. I was like, you have that going on right now in China because they're trying to re-educate them. Terms that politicians in this country have said they want to do as well. So imagine if we take this a step further, and if you have a system, an AI-like system that reads your tweets and posts, and let's say you tweet or post something that's not the official narrative, maybe factual, but it's not what they want to be heard, and they turn off your social system. Now, if you have to go to a government-run medical institution, and then let's say your social score gets too low that they limit your services, what happens at that point?
Yeah, all kinds of services are being limited based on credit score. Your ability to book hotels, your ability to do anything to get, all kinds of services you're being denied to because even financial services because of the credit score. And that is a reality of the socialist government in China. And we don't realize that we have been indoctrinated over time. The conservatism kind of side, they tell me, oh, government should not get involved because we're for small government. Well, this is the role of the government, is to keep these companies in check, is to make sure that these companies don't get too big to the point where they're actually owning the government. Is regulating them so that the consumer and the people are the ones that are actually being served. And I think that when you get into this kind of mix of the government owning companies, the companies owning the government, you don't know who's who, you don't know what they're doing, then you end up with a socialized system that only makes sense for them because government and corruption, they are one. Government doesn't exist without corruption. So the bigger the government, the bigger the corruption. Making government bigger doesn't mean that it's going to be more efficient. It just means that there's going to be more waste. And people don't realize that they look at the sky, answers from the government all the time. Government take care of me. I need the government to provide me with all the services because I can trust the government. Well, sweetie, the government is owned. There's the people who are in there, they're receiving money from companies. And you need to realize that those companies are the ones that actually own, your quality of life. So don't trust the government for that. Trust yourself.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I pulled up several articles from the mainstream media about the Chinese internment camps. And most of them were talking about Muslims, but they're obviously doing it to Christians and just, what they would call alt-right or whatever you want to refer to it, basically people just speaking freedoms and truth. They're putting them in these camps. I've heard rumors of organ harvesting and other things. You have the social credit system over there. The corporations have to be, I believe it's like 60% owned by the government, but then you have zero corporate taxes. So you have a lot of large companies like Apple and Google partnering with them now. And the reason I keep bringing up China is because this is the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations model. These people that are in control now, you have to go back in history and realize that in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, the CIA and these big money players like the Rockefellers, the JP Morgans, the Rothschilds financed the rise of the communist government in China because they believe in this corporatocracy control system. China is their beta model. That's why I'm talking about it. They're trying it in China. It's working for over 1 billion people. Now the people don't like it very much. Some of them, don't care. Some of them are just living within the system. They are in the matrix and they are blissfully ignorant. And I used to be like that. And sometimes I wish there were blue pills, like temporary blue pills. I could just pop them. I guess that's kind of called alcohol. So I guess we kind of do have a temporary blue pill, but I keep bringing up China because if you don't think they are trying to implement that system here and that they already are, you're not paying attention.
Yeah, I mean, there's something called, crime. And when you commit a crime, you go to jail. And we're not debating that. We're debating actually your social score, which is basically, they have all these terms that cannot be substantiated. It's like companies are, expelling people or failing to provide services because they don't agree with their values, right? What is a value? What is your social score? What are some of these things that they're bringing up? So social score is based on all kinds of things that we don't actually know what they are. Somebody is being unpleasant. Somebody is talking loud. Somebody is doing this. Somebody is doing that. And when they reach the bottom of their score, are they really that useful to society? What happens when they reach the bottom of the score? Let's say, somebody, just lost their job, lost their family, is going through a tough time, and their score is lowering. And they reach, I don't know how it works in a numerical kind of way, but let's say if they reached 100 out of 800, what happens to those people at that level? Are those people going to get rounded up? Are those people going to be, taken somewhere to be indoctrinated where they're going to learn how to be, a proper citizen, but in reality it's just work camps? We don't know what's happening in those, because that's the key that they use. They don't use facts. They don't use numbers. They just use this kind of terms that they can catch us at. And that is why we need to regulate them, because they can't keep doing that to people anymore based on their values as a company. Come on, give me a break.
So you're talking more about like Twitter and Facebook banning off of just their kind of generic terms of use?
Not just them, everywhere. I think Laura Loomer got banned from PayPal because of they said the only reason they banned her is because her values didn't align with the company, and they kept her money for 180 days. They kept her money.
They've done that to me with different ventures too. So I think PayPal is definitely not the best company for sure. And you're right. We need to develop alternatives. And the problem is you get into these regulatory messes where it's very, very difficult to. In theory, to develop a secondary PayPal payment system is fairly simple. I did it. I created an app called Clink, and we created this Clink credit system where it was basically like a currency for, buying and gifting drinks. And you could trade Clinks, you could instantly send them for free, and then you could redeem them, 1 for dollars. So there's ways to do it, and you see it kind of now with the cryptocurrencies. You have Bitcoin, you have Lite, Ethereum. I don't know if you've gotten too much into those. I could see those potentially being an alternative, but I also see a lot of limitations to the current aspects. More importantly, the government aspects to it. I mean, you have multiple governments that have shut it down. China realized that is I keep bringing up China, but that's a threat to their system. So I think it was last year or in 2017, they banned all cryptocurrency exchanges to just shut it down. So now the only way to do it is to use those systems illegally.
Yeah, and the government will find ways to do whatever they want to keep this free systems from popping up, because I don't know if they feel threatened by the ability to not regulate them as much as they would want to, or just they don't want competition. It's really, really hard to tell. But at the same time, we have to realize the size that China, let's bring up China again, the size of China. If we sleep on China, China is going to take over the world. I mean, it probably already has in a way of just, how resilient they are and how powerful they are.
Well, no, they're
Where,
taking over all the micro minerals. You know, these
yeah.
very important minerals that are used in all of our smartphone devices and everything. They've gone throughout the world buying up these rare minerals.
They don't have any kind of feelings for the environment. They don't have so we get into these trade deals where we cannot pollute, we cannot do anything. We pay trillions of dollars to billions of dollars to be a part of these trade deals, just to weaken us as a nation while China is growing uncontrollably. And you see the rise of all because we're going to get involved if you try to mess with Venezuela. But it's genocide. They're willing to go through genocide to withhold their systems and to try to become more powerful. They don't care about people. So if we fall or if we become weaker as a nation, these are the people that are going to be taking over and expanding and doing all kinds of things that we don't even want to think of.
Right, and you know the real issue is, again, especially when you bring up Venezuela, I think they've now seen it again. Why do we keep making the same mistake? Right? We saw it with Nazi Germany. You saw it with the Chinese communists killing 100. You know, everyone says Hitler's the worst of all. That's not true. Mao was the worst of all. Stalin was probably second in terms of numbers, and then it was Hitler. And there's even some debate on the numbers of Hitler. Definitely not a nice guy. But you got to look at it saying, is it just him as an individual that the problem, or why is it repeating over and over again? And now Venezuela is just the latest one, right? It's just the current one happening now. How did Venezuela end up in the same position as China 4 decades ago? Education. It's the problem where no one was educated on the history of really what happened, and then they come in with these talking points that sound great. That's the scary part, is the people that don't understand the history hear the talking points. The talking points are great. Free food, free education, free beer, whatever. Everything's free. Just give me the power, and then as soon as you get the power, oh wait, none of that's true. You're actually going to give me all your money, and I'll give you back some stuff, but it won't even be what you want.
Yeah, you have to understand a couple of things, and that's, what happened in Venezuela, what happened in Brazil, what happens in communism all over again, and socialism. And people have all these different terms. They have democratic socialism, communism. It's all the same thing. When it comes down to it, it's all the same thing. Okay, don't fight me on this. It's all the same thing.
Even
So
fascism is the same. I mean, that's just slightly different, where you have private corporations, but they're highly in bed with the government. It's all the same.
yeah, and people they use a Nazi as a kind of offense. I think that calling somebody a communist should be more of offense, because communists kill over like 100 million people in the world, and they're killing people right now. and we can't do anything about it. They're pretty much holding us, China's pretty much holding America hostage when it comes to interfering. And I'm not saying we should interfere, but if we were to interfere, if we all wanted to interfere, we still couldn't interfere. The letter of my chair is making noise. We still
Sure, it
couldn't
wasn't your
interfere.
dinner.
No, no, no. What did I have? Maybe. Anyway, so we couldn't interfere even if we wanted to because of China has become so powerful as a government. And how it happened in Brazil was that the government and these companies work together. You know, they own the media, they own the entertainment industry, so they held the narrative. They controlled what people heard, and then the government owned educational systems, so they held the narrative completely. So people just didn't know they didn't know what they didn't know, right? They were just told what the government wanted them to realize, and it's all beautiful and rainbows and butterflies, but in the end when you realize the actual, you know, practicality of it, you understand that the system was built over time to manipulate you. And that's what I'm so concerned about it with academia in the United States. And socialists are like, everybody has to go to college. There has to be free college. You know, F college, F college. Not everybody is built for college. I mean, I know engineers, I know doctors need to go to college, nurses, you know, whatever. But not everybody needs to go to college as a society. And what are we gonna do? You know, trying to push these people through free college. We're trying to. Those are indoctrination camps to allow them to be more easily, you know, manipulated when we push the actual gates around them.
You bring up some very valid points. But again, I think we're missing a really big key that I want to get in here because it's the hidden hand behind most of it. And we talk about colleges and how they're indoctrination camps. We talk about communism, fascism. But what most people don't realize is that these were all done purposely by the large financiers, the international bankers. And when you go back in history, you can see time and time again the same players pop up. J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Rothschild, Ford, the giant ones. So when you bring up education, where did the academia come from? The majority of it. Now, obviously, there's some basic stuff like algebra, mathematics, which are just necessary and basic. But let's look at the medical aspect of education, for example. Most people don't realize that in the early 1900s, they were actually teaching natural medicine. So herbal treatments, things like that. You could say, oh, it was back then before they knew anything. But what you don't realize is that the Ford and Rockefeller foundations came in and donated millions of dollars, which would be worth like hundreds of millions now, to these colleges, and they said all we want in exchange is seats on the board of directors. And by those seats, they took control over writing the academic, curricula. And what they did is they moved it from natural medicine to pharmaceuticals because they owned pharmaceutical corporations, and a lot of them were even using petroleum-based products. So we have to look back and how that international banking cabal really has had their hand for at least the last 100 years on making the system.
Yeah, and this is pretty much logic as we look to history. How did America even become the country that it has become? How do we become so rich? How do we become so powerful? Well, we benefited a lot from wars. The reason why we became such a powerful country is because of wars. It's because of the bad things that happened and how we financed it, right? How we financed during World War II. We financed their weapons, and then once the war was over, we financed their rebuilding. So people don't really make a lot of money in terms of, calm, in terms of good times. They just make a lot of money when everybody is struggling, and that's how they want to keep things going. They want to keep things going in a way that it's the most profitable to them, and that they have the most type of control. I just, it's not good for us, and we have to keep real accountability with how is the government being involved with those people, how is the elected representatives being involved with those people, who's funding them, who's saying this, who's saying that. And that's what I think, that a lot of people in this country, even for the presidential race, a lot of people didn't vote because a lot of people nowadays, they feel like their vote doesn't matter. I think there's only 30% of this country, that 35% of this country, that voted for the presidential race. And when you think about it, and I might be wrong with this numbers, I don't know, I just heard
No,
somebody telling
it's
me.
I think it's around like 53% didn't vote, somewhere around there. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
but
definitely
it's a
more.
big,
The majority didn't.
it's a big number anyway. And why are these people voting? It's because they feel like their vote doesn't matter. And when you look at the establishment, right? There's people on the left, there's people on the right, but in the end, they're, behind closed doors, they're going to bed with each other. Not literally, I don't know, but they're going to bed with each
Well,
other.
I've heard
So over
rumors about that,
time,
but yeah.
so over time, they become like desensitized to politics, because time and time again, we vote for these politicians and we believe that they're going to make the change, when in reality, they're just protecting each other behind closed doors.
Right. So it comes back to, we're basically watching like a WWE match. And I think there's a big debate on whether Trump's the good guy or the bad guy, or a neutral guy who's just really the outsider that got thrown in. To be honest, I'm not sure. I've seen good things, I've seen bad things. What we know for sure is at least Congress is definitely partially controlled. And I would go back to say that a lot of them controlled, from my research, and we'll do several episodes coming up, and I've done some videos on it in the past too, through blackmail. I think a lot of these people are blackmailed, whether it's monetarily through, being controlled through just wanting to get more money. I think there's an aspect of pedophilia and also just like some sexual perversion blackmail that's going on. And then I think there's just another subsect of Congress that are just followers. So they kind of have a stranglehold on key people. And I would probably say that, the Schumers of the world, the Pelosi's, the Maxine Waters, they are controlled. Look at Dianne Feinstein, who's my senator, and she gets caught having a Chinese spy for 20 years as her driver. I mean, you're telling me for 20 years you didn't know that, and you're telling me that our government, supposedly the most well-funded intelligence agencies in the entire world, with technology that you and me but can't even fathom, they didn't know that for 20 years?
Yeah. If they have no kind of moral compass, and this is something that the Republicans are even failing at, as the Democrats are becoming a little bit more, I guess, a symbol of the establishment. The Republicans have this moral compass that they don't want to cross, but they have to realize that a lot of these companies and a lot of these political people out there, political strategists and analysts and political companies and Opera research companies, if they can't find anything, they'll make it up. So, for example, I don't have a parking ticket. I don't have a speeding ticket in my name. I don't have nothing. But if I ran for office, they'll probably, call me and be like, you have to drop. You have to drop, because if you don't drop, we're going to make up this stuff about you. It's going to be all over the news, and your life is going to be over. And now I'm thinking, what if I lose? I'm never going to be able to find a job again. All of these things. So it keeps regular people away from politics, and it makes sure that only the people who are selected can actually win and go to the Congress. So it's, there's a system to keep good people away from politics, and that system is controlled by people that have the money.
Right. Right. And who is at the top pulling the strings, we could debate. I think that's really hard to put my finger on. What I've done before, and is documented on nowdaily.com very well, is that all the major companies, Facebook, the major shareholders that own the majority together of the company, are the same ones that own Twitter, and the same ones that own Chase Bank, and the same ones that own Disney, and the same ones that own Time Warner, and the same ones that own AT&T, and it goes on and on. So that's provable. Go on Google right now, look up institutional investors on any of them, you'll see the same companies, Vanguard, BlackRock, and a handful of their subsidiaries. So we have to ask, if these entities are in control, it makes sense that there is a narrative. And I think it's amazing that we still have to debate with people on whether the news is controlled or not. And to me, it's blatantly obvious. You can connect it monetarily, and then it's just like screaming at you in the face. How can anyone say that the news is objective and truthful?
Yeah, and doesn't AT&T own CNN too?
Time Warner, yeah, I believe they own AOL Time Warner. I think they do own CNN.
So the thing there is that, no, this is me just going off on my own, I guess, blazing my own trail. But these people and these companies, and I did some research on it, I couldn't find an actual answer. But the answers that I found, they actually led to something that kind of like creeped me out a little bit, which is your cell phone, the thing that you're holding to watch this right now. If these companies have other vested interests, for example, if the company that owns certain media organization also owns your cell phone carrier, then when they have a vested interest to find out your habits, to find out what you access, to find out when you go to this website, to try to target you. And sometimes you think of something and the ad pops up and you're like, how did this happen? How did this ad come up? And then to what extent are they really doing all this I guess I want to say this data research, this privacy invasion? To what extent are they're keeping our texts in their servers, they're keeping our calls in their servers. This is not news. So if the police wants to read my text, they can just ask them, because those texts are stored somewhere that they can have access to. And why aren't they looking? Aren't they going through these things? Aren't they finding patterns? And it's something really concerning to me. I actually, as a personal belief, I try to make their job harder. I try to use different types of more secured, I don't know to what extent, but more secure browsers, more secure types of messaging apps, just because the government has it so easy. All these companies have it so easy. All they can do is just, they own your information, they own everything that you say. Make it a little bit harder for them to find out everything about who you are. Doesn't mean that you're wrong, doesn't mean that you're doing something bad. Just make it a little bit harder, because they don't own that information. Who owns that? It's you. You have the right to the things that you say. You have the right to the things that you do. And if you're not breaking the law, then you have the right to privacy. So just, make it harder. I don't know to what extent these companies are actually looking into our cell phones, looking into our activities, and finding these patterns and building a profile on us.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely doing that, right? Everyone said that was a conspiracy. So many people talked about it for 10, 20 years when cell phones were first coming out, and then you had iPhones, and everyone's like, oh, it's not spying on you, it's not keeping track. And then Snowden comes out, and there's a lot of strange things about Snowden. Was he really a lone guy, or was it a CIA psyop? I don't know. But what we know for sure is they're collecting what they call metadata. Now, metadata is, they say this term to try to get away with it, right? Basically they have these think tanks. This is key for people to understand. There are think tanks like the Rand Corporation, which is literally down the street from me. I could go walk there. It's in Santa Monica, right in front of their building. You would not believe what's right in front. It's an art structure made of chains of an atomic bomb mushroom cloud. So this is a defense contractor. And what they're doing...
Is somebody knocking on your door?
Yeah, no, like from up above me. I don't know. It's weird. This is a defense contractor that is thinking about narratives. So when you come up with like the Russian collusion hoax, right? I think it's been pretty proven that there wasn't this major thing, or Stormy Daniels or this. People are sitting together in rooms thinking about how to come up with these narratives. And I think that's really important for people to understand.
Yeah, and that's why I said that socialism and communism and democratic socialism, it's all the same thing. They just find ways to make the name a little bit better. So there's the Venezuela, outrage right now, where everybody's like, no, I cannot partake with Venezuela. Well, what Venezuela is doing though is socialism. We're trying to do democratic socialism. It is so much different.
It's really
Newsflash.
funny when they ask them what's the difference, and they always have like a stunned look on their face.
Yeah,
We
they're
get to
gonna find out
vote
another
for it.
name. They're gonna come up with another name once it's how's
Well,
that gonna
first it was the king. This is what I'm trying to get. We never switched from the feudal system. It's an
hmm
illusion that we did. And look at Canada. Canada's a weird place. I lived there for a few months. My parents lived there for like 2 or 3 years because of my dad's job. And they still have the queen on their money. They're walking around thinking they're an independent country, but they still worship the queen. Like,
yeah.
to me, that's very strange. And I don't get people in England that still like the monarchy. They still kind of worship it, like, oh, we like having it. It's this nice little old lady, and it's great to watch these ceremonies on BBC and drink our tea. And I'm like, what are you talking about? These people are enslaving you. They're taking their money to live in these giant mansions, and you're happy about it.
Yeah, I think that we have been conditioned as a society, and that is what I keep saying. We're not as involved as we think we are. A lot of people say, "Oh, we're such a great society. We can make socialism work." No, we cannot. We're not as evolved. We're not this enlightened kind of Buddha type of individuals who will make socialism work. In fact, there's not a person alive that could make socialism work. Look at your heroes. Look at the people that you idolize. If you look at their actual history, you find out that they weren't really fighting for the things that you thought they were fighting for. A lot of these people, they hold up, all kinds of um, types of, heroes that when you look into their history, I mean, in Brazil, the biggest hero was Che Guevara, which we found out was a pretty bad guy once, we started getting the chains of communism away from us. And there's all
Why
these
do you
people
think
that
people still? I mean, I see people around here in LA wear T-shirts with this guy on it.
they don't know. They have been indoctrinated, and it's really scary because it's an army of people who have been manipulated, brainwashed to believe the things that they believe in. There's, for example, Mahatma Gandhi. Everybody thinks that he's a great guy and that he, helped with the apartheid in South Africa, and then he moved to India, and then he set himself on fire. Dude, he was not for diversity.
Really?
Look at his
Wait. Gandhi
history.
is one of the ones I liked. What are you telling me right now? You're shattering my
I'm
idea. I
just
thought
saying.
he was one of the freedom fighters.
Well, no, he was not, and I'm not gonna do your homework for you because it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be, some tears are gonna come out.
Just give me the
But
cliff
basically,
notes.
but basically, the thing is that everybody's like, oh, he fought for the right of blacks. No, he didn't. He fought for the right of Indians to be included in the white category, and he didn't give a damn about black Africans. So he didn't want them to be included in this, better hierarchy of society. He just wanted Indians from India to be included in the better hierarchy. So you see all these people coming out, and you realize that you're just taught a version of the facts, and it becomes really hard as an individual to actually find idols and to find people that you actually should follow blindly 100%. And I don't think there are anybody that you can do
That's
that. At
that's
least
the
I don't know of.
conclusion I've come to. If you asked me 10 years ago, I would say, different actors that I like, comedians, some musicians. Most people aren't talking about politicians as heroes or scientists or engineers. And now maybe a few people would say Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, but mainly because he just made a shit ton of money. Um, and I think you're right. Is we have a lot of these false icons, the heroes, right? And
Yeah.
it comes back to I truly believe, from what I've seen in the WikiLeaks emails and just researching and looking at patterns, there's obviously a narrative, and it's being pushed by a lot of the Hollywood celebrities. And from what I've heard, is a lot of them don't really have a choice. It's kind of like think within the line or you're out. I think a lot of people are talking about Owen Benjamin, who was like, what, a C celebrity, D celebrity at the top. But he's talking about how the system basically pushed him out. He lost his agents over some remarks about, kids dressing up and, cross-dressing and stuff. So I think it's really difficult, and, it kind of blows my mind that the most popular people still today are the Kardashians and Kendall. Now you have the Kendall Jenners, which are the younger ones, just kind of indoctrinating the new generation that are in high school right now.
Yeah, I mean, if you're out there and if you're seeing this, be really careful with the people that you idolize. Become the idol that you want. Become the person that you want to look up to, and just live to those standards. Go out there and do stuff, and be a better person. Because when you look at these people, it's like those people are put in a position of trust. Idols are put in a position of trust, and they're used because of that. They're used because of their power to influence the youth. And you see the narrative becoming increasingly shocking as the time goes by. I mean, before, a few years ago, it was just like, oh, let's make sure that the LGBT was respected, which I agree 100%. Let's make sure that they have the right to marry. 100%. Go ahead and marry.
Well,
I
hold
don't
on,
give a
hold on.
shit.
I would say, why do you need the government involved in marriage at all?
Exactly.
Let them
But
get married, but it should be the same for all of us. The only reason people really want the marriage is because of the tax benefits, right? So you can get a little more of your money back that they stole from you if you get married. That's the
yeah,
main reason. That, and basically, if someone were to get injured or something, that they would have the legal right to be with them because they're the spouse. Other than that, we can get rid of this whole system. Live with who you want, do whatever you want. There should be no reason that I have to go down to the LA County Courthouse, the same room that I filed for my DBA, which is a doing business as. The very next window is where you file for a marriage certificate. You're
are you
filing a
mansplaining?
business contract, and most people don't realize that.
Are you mansplaining? I think you're
No, it's
mansplaining.
not that. I'm just explaining to
I'm just kidding.
people
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm
that,
just
like,
kidding.
this is the system.
Yeah.
Why are we dealing with it?
I really don't care about the government being involved in a lot of things that it shouldn't be involved in. But if you look back a few years, that was the narrative. That was the things that people were fighting for. And whatever, it's, fight for it if you want. But now it's become, transgender. Okay. And then it becomes LGBTQ, blah, 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 all those things. Uh, Q is for queer. I still, I'm 25 years old. I'm probably gonna go and die. I'm gonna die without knowing what queer actually means because I research all the time. I can't
I thought it
understand
was
what
the
queer
same
means.
as gay. Am I wrong?
Well, but
Is it
there's
different?
the G already first. So see, I think it means for different things. It
I saw
englobes
an
different
acronym. It
things.
was like 20 letters the other day. Someone was talking about. Look, I'm
Yeah, and
fine
then
with anyone doing whatever they want. That's not the problem. The problem is this is
but
a distraction, and then they're using it to censor people that don't agree with it.
But if you see, my point is they have been changing this narrative so much, it become you cannot misgender people. Now you have to let the bathrooms, and then you have to, and so it's become now it's kids have are allowed to cross dress. Kids are allowed to be injected with hormones. Kids are allowed to do this. Kids are allowed to do that, and to become transgenders. And it's like their narrative has become increasingly shocking over a span of 5, 10 years. And why is it changing so much? Why is it changing so hard? Why so many Hollywood celebrities, cheering for a kid to be performing at a gay nightclub? What happens in those clubs? I've been to two of them, and I'm not gonna lie. But the thing is that what happens there is dancing, is alcohol. Why would a kid have to be there Why would a kid be a part of that environment at all? And there's people cheering for that. So you see that the things that they're pushing out there as this idols, their narrative is just so increasingly shocking, and they expect society to fall for it, and many of us do, especially if we don't know any better.
Yeah, again, I think the kids is a tough one because again, I'm on the side of freedom, but then you have kids involved, so then you ask, do parents have to get involved? Can I bring a kid to just a normal bar? Currently with the laws, no. I think in some places you could bring them to eat, but they can't sit at the bar, things like that. I don't know if I fully agree with that. I don't think there should even be laws kind of limiting that. I think it should be more society that frowns upon it, not that you're going to get arrested. The problem that I really see is not even that. I think you're right. There may be an issue with that. I don't think the government arresting people doing it is necessarily the solution. I think it's people like you saying, I'm not cool with it. I think that solves it better than getting the government involved with it. My bigger concern is that they're going against people that speak out against it, whether you agree with them speaking out or not, and they're censoring that point of view. And I think that's really when we get into the social credit score. Someone like an Owen Benjamin or an InfoWars or Gavin McInnes or Laura Loomer, whether you agree with them or not, and I agree with them on some points, others I don't. What I agree with is we're going down a real slippery slope here. They've already shut off this channel and demonetized it, which is why I stopped making videos for a long time, and this is the first one in like 2 years almost. They could do that again right after this video. We don't know. There's not many other platforms to stream on. So if they can censor it and there's no judge, jury, or conviction, at what point does it stop? At what point does it go the next step, which is the internment camps? Oh, you're not thinking the right way. We're going to put you in an internment camp to re-educate you. And if you can't be re-educated, then we're just going to have to eliminate you. This has already been discussed in these think tank meetings, documented. This is what's happening in China right now. I just showed proof of it. So I think this is something to be taken really seriously.
Yeah, I mean, when you have people who have a different point of view from Hollywood celebrities and all of these people being censored, and they are the only ones that get it, their words out there. They're the only ones that don't get censored. Then they're going to, really manipulate the youth. And when you think about re-educating programs, what is prison? What is prison? What is jail? Jail is a way to bring somebody who committed a crime into, a vacation kind of camp where they would learn how to be a part of society again, a productive member of society. Now, how does that actually work in practicality? It doesn't work like that. Some of them come out worse than when they got in. Some of them come out really messed up. So when you put people away because you're trying to re-educate them, they're not going to be re-educated. They're going to work for their stay, first of all. They're going to be working all day. And what are the standards of that education? Who makes those standards? Based on what? What kind of education are you going to be getting? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it starts with education. It is compounded by the media, and then those two forces then create these different laws and go in and create a societal thought. We're seeing a big fracture in society right now because it's like divided into two. You have people that are believing everything on CNN and MSNBC, and then you have people that don't believe it. To me, that's kind of the big differential.
Yeah.
So,
if anything, I think the best thing that Trump ever did was to expose the fake media. If he doesn't do anything else, the best thing he did was to expose the fake media, because we knew it was there kind of, but we didn't know to what extent. We didn't see them, running wild the way we did once he won.
I agree with you, but I feel like he really isn't doing much to affect it. He came up with the catchphrase fake news. which was great. But before he ever came around in 2015 saying that, I was well aware of it. People that were really doing research into what's going on are well aware of it. We were well aware that there's only 6 major corporations and that they all have the same shareholders. Then it's very obvious that there's narratives. People just have to look back. Look at what they said, just in 2003. WMDs in Iraq. WMDs in Iraq, WMDs in Iraq. We get into Iraq, we kill thousands of people, no WMDs. Okay, so then they say it was the same thing. 16 or 15 or 14 intelligence agencies tell us that there absolutely are WMDs in Iraq. We have got to do this. And then they go in front of the UN and they got pieces of paper and they say, look, we took pictures of this, and because there's a little dirt pile here, there's absolutely WMDs. Boom, 1 million people dead, and totally wrong. No one got in trouble for it except the dead people. So, that's just one aspect. We want to go back to like your doctor, keep your doctor, right? Yeah. That affected me directly because I'm an entrepreneur. Most people don't realize it because they're W-2 employees, which is, to me, if there was one change that we could switch, and if Trump's watching this is something he could do at any time and doesn't need Congress to do, that will drastically change it. So I would tweet this to Trump when we're done, but here's the one change. Right now, W-2 employees, which are the majority of income earners in the United States, right? W-2 employees get their taxes taken out automatically, deducted from their employer. If we just made it where the employer could not deduct those taxes and people had to physically write a check to pay those taxes, it would change everything. Because I physically write 100%. The check. So
100%.
I think that change right there would drastically change the entire society, and that's something Trump could do right now.
I have never agreed with anything more in my life, because here's the thing: if people actually have to write checks, when that money doesn't even hit your account, you're like, you don't care about it, you don't miss it. But if you actually have to sit there and physically write a check with $20,000, $10,000, whatever the amount
I've done it. It's definitely not fun. It's definitely not fun.
Then you're going to wonder, where is that money going to? I think it should be one of the changes that we should see pretty soon in society to make us a little bit more aware of what our role actually is.
Yeah, I mean, that one change alone. But going back to Trump on fake news, because I think that's kind of wrapping up the this episode of the social credit system, because fake news and the social credit system are very close in line, because the credit system penalizes you if you don't believe the official narratives. And Trump did a good job calling it out, and I think people, there's a very small subsection that were awake to it, and what he did is he widened that to a larger percentage of people. So I agree that that was a good thing. But since then, he really hasn't done much. He could do some very simple things. For example, he could put together a documentary and document the actual times that they lied and the documented facts of what they lied about. Just do that over and over again for an hour-long documentary, and that would have a huge impact on waking up more people. I think that, I think Melania Trump won some suit against like some slander or libel. She won like a couple $1 million. That's great, but the problem is they're doing it all the time. I had a business that failed mainly because I had a disgruntled partner. We didn't do anything illegal. We didn't do anything that was breaking an agreement that we had in writing with him. But he wrote a letter that was filled with a bunch of BS. It was not true at all. And he started going on our app and giving it to all of our clients. And it just shows you how easy it is for someone to lie about you and how easy it is for someone to believe it, whether it's on CNN or a situation like that. And I think that's really, really dangerous. So we're in this kind of muddied waters where we don't really know what's true, what's false. I don't even know anymore if the Earth's flat or round or pancake shape or an oval, or Neil deGrasse Tyson says it's more pear-shaped. I'm confused as hell on everything I'm seeing, and I'm just trying to filter it all out.
Yep. I mean, I'm on the same boat. I don't know what's real or not. I mean, I hope that, we need to find a little bit of balance to the things that we believe in so that we can move forward as a society, right? But so sometimes we have to do, say things like, I don't know if this is true, but I'm going to follow it just because, I have to be a productive member of society. But when you actually try to understand why, and like you said, the root causes of everything, then that's when the thought process begins in your mind, and you should exercise that whenever possible so that you become more aware of things and how they hit you and how you move forward in life as an individual who's capable of self awareness, and you have your own thoughts. You're not just a sheep anymore.
I think that's a great point, and I think on that we'll wrap up this episode. We'll be back with some more discussions. If anyone takes anything away from this, it's to be careful on what you're saying online, which is unfortunate. The main thing is we just want freedom to be able to say things, whether it's good or bad. I think we can all agree that once you get into physical violence and threats, that's not acceptable, but words are just words. And hurting feelings shouldn't be able to break the law or take away your bank account or your right to speak freely on the internet or anywhere else. So we'll leave it at that. Julia, thanks for your time, and we'll talk soon. This has been Now Daily. Go subscribe, hit the button below so you can get updates on our next episodes, and go to nowdaily.com to learn more.
Thanks for listening. This has been Now Daily with Robert Crawford, uncovering real stories worth sharing. Want more? Visit the website nowdaily.com/show.